Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thanks for being here as always. This is the second Arsecast in 2 days. If you want to hear all about the Southampton game, the 1-1 win, I was going to say it feels like a win, the 1-1 draw with Southampton, myself and James had a conversation about the game yesterday, so there is an Arsecast there for you to listen to. If that's what you fancy, if you haven't listened to it already, go back, check it. It's there. It's right there. Just push the button, download, stream, stick it in your ears. It is all there. Today, something a little bit different. I'll be joined in a couple of moments' time by Clive Palmer, who you know from the Arsenal Vision podcast, I'm sure. We're going to talk about culture and identity and changing cultures and changing things at football clubs and resistance to that change and how difficult it can be, dressing room power, and putting in place structures and plans and strategies and things like that. So that's coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. But of course, I think we have to acknowledge one of the most amazing things to happen this week. And no, I'm not talking about Arsenal scoring a goal from open play. It's even more amazing than that. This comes from the midweek games, and they were having one of those, one of the shows where the guys sit around and talk about football while watching the football. And this was Tim Sherwood, former Tottenham player, former Tottenham manager, former Aston Villa manager. You might remember him from such FA Cup finals as 2015. The scene, it's 1-1 between Liverpool and Tottenham. Liverpool have a corner late in the game, and Tim Sherwood, he's not that worried.
Not too worried about these corners. I mean, it might come back to bite me here, but I think Tottenham have got the dominancy in the air there, so I'm not sure anyone can get the head on the first ball for Liverpool, apart from that one.
Tim! It's Firmino in the 90th minute.
Wow, what a header. What an incredible header that is.
I mean, it's up there with the Steve McLaren versus Iceland thing. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, just Google Steve McLaren Iceland or put it in YouTube. You will find a clip which will brighten your day. And we all need that right at this moment in time, given what's going on with Arsenal. So thank you very much indeed to Tim Sherwood for the comedy moment of the week. Right. Time to get on with the show, and a conversation that cropped up this week on Twitter between myself and Clive and Elliot at Yankee Gunner on Twitter was about culture and the idea of culture at a football club, whether it's important, whether it's necessary, whether it is something that we should spend too much time worrying about. Do we only worry about it when times are good? Is it an issue when things are going badly? But maybe it could also be a reason or part of the reason why things are going badly. So with me to talk about all that from the Arsenal Vision podcast, it's Clive Palmer. Hi, Clive.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm looking forward to not talking specifics about Arsenal for just a little while. I'm sure towards the end of this conversation, we might bring it back around to what's happening at Arsenal. But are you on board with the idea of culture at a football club being an important thing, a crucial, fundamental thing? And if so, how do you define culture at a football club?
It's a difficult one, right? So footballers, they tend to be quite robotic in some ways. Think it back almost like to the army. It's almost like you have to be certain places at certain times. You got to be there for training. You got to be this place time for your dinner, this time for the meetings, and it's quite structured. And so within a football club, there are normalities of behaviour, and so a culture literally is a number of behaviours by which we live by, right? So, and every club has its own culture. Every club has its own what's okay. I can do this. What's not okay. Most clubs have a massive fine system. So if you don't do things right, you get fined, right? Somebody in the dressing room looks after the fines. And it's almost like the way where the players look after the internal culture amongst themselves, which underpins the overall, I don't want to say non-negotiables or 10 commandments, whatever you decide they are in your club, those key pillars of your culture, things like, hard work, determination, trust, those statements above that sit beyond, open communication, respect each other, those sort of real nice, flowery, soft culture statements that sit above and drive those behaviours, right? So And they're brought in by various leaders in the club. So each team has its own culture, and it's really just a list of behaviours. This is okay and this is not okay. This is what we aspire to be within our culture when it's working 100%.
Right. So, I mean, you're talking about a team culture there, which I think is quite interesting, and certain things are expected, set in stone, professionalism, and you listed off some, and you know, things like punctuality are part of that team culture, you know, where everybody should feel, even though there are obvious discrepancies between the status of people within the squad, you know, that there are rules which are in place for everybody. So if you're the guy who's earning 350 grand a week, or you're the guy who's earning £3,500 a week, if you're supposed to be out on the training pitch at 10:30, you're out on the training pitch at 10:30. If you're not, you're getting the fine. You know, whether it's a percentage of your wages or whatever it might be. You know, that's what's going to happen, and those are the things that help define you. You know, is that separate from the culture of a club itself, or how much does that lead into the playing style? Could that be incorporated into culture, if you like? Because, you know, down the years, you've always heard about these clubs that play, you know, traditionally, supposedly really nice attacking football. You used to hear it a lot about West Ham, you know, the West Ham way. Yep. And even, you know, some other London clubs who've been associated with nice football, even if for many years, you know, they haven't really achieved that. You know, so how do you mix all those things together, or can they be separate things, like your team's culture, your manager's culture, your club culture, or is there a need to sort of bring them all together under one umbrella?
I think what I spoke to was really around team performance, really a team culture. So, you know, you normally start with why we are here, you know, then let's build our trust, let's build our goals, let's understand what we're doing, and then how are we going to go about that as a group. And then basically we push forward from there on and hopefully get to a place where we're performing in a high performance type way. But then the type of things you'll talk about there, Andrew, may be things that are really around the identity of the club, right? So us being football people, we identify certain clubs with how they play, even down to now we're so much more informed, down to the systems by which they play. You know, if I say Barcelona in the last 10 years, we all know straight away the system that they play. Yeah. Right? You know, the same for Man City in recent years. Right? And so I think that's something that we've potentially lacked. You know, I say we, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We've potentially lacked. And I think we've potentially gone through so many changes within the club that it's hard for us to identify what Arsenal really are on the pitch systemically, because we've been challenging ourselves to try to mix a group of people together to find a system for them rather than the other way around. And then you look at the change off the pitch and then you think to yourself, well, what is our identity and culture there? Because it's those leaders that define that culture, right? So the key manager, coach, he will bring that culture into the team aspect, the playing aspect. So if you look at from a behaviour point of view, because of the change, is that culture strong? You look at off the pitch identity side of things, and you think about the duality of ownership, how that's changed, different chief execs, different scouts, different contracts guys, different head of football. Well, how can we have a strong culture off the pitch that's stable and sustained? Yeah, we can't possibly have, right? So this is where we are at the moment. We're looking at ourselves, or we should be looking at ourselves in a very strong way, and asking ourselves, what are we from a team point of view, and what do we want to be from a culture point of view? And some of the situation we're seeing right now is we have maybe a group of players that have been here as long or longer than some of the leaders within the club. Yeah. You know, and I think that's where the duality and the fight is going on right now, potentially, depending on what you read and believe. Potentially we're having a bit of a struggle laying down a new culture versus the old culture. And I think that is the holding pattern that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something there, you know, between culture and identity, whether they're one and the same or whether they feed into each other, I'm not quite sure. Because it feels like, one of the things that Mikel Arteta talked about specifically was changing the culture at the club. And, regardless of what people think about him now or the job that he's doing now, I don't remember too many people objecting to the idea that he might come in and be a little more hard. And I think that's kind of the message that we got from him when he talked about changing the culture. He talked about, how we live at this football club, the work that we do, so on and so forth. I don't think there were too many people going, oh, these poor guys, don't go too hard on them. It was more about get out the biggest fucking stick you can find and start bashing it around, metaphorically speaking, or in certain cases, actually get a big fucking stick and hit some of them around the backside for all I care. But, it's a difficult thing to implement because at a football club, we all know the old adage about how it's easier to sack a manager than sack the entire squad. And there's a kind of safety net in there, isn't there, for players, because they know, like more than likely, it's not going to be a case that 6 or 8 of them are going to be out the door. It's much easier just to get rid of one guy and bring in someone else who could try and squeeze a little bit more out of them. So coming into a club where things have been ingrained, where, it's comfortable, where there isn't the pressure to perform. And I don't just mean like in the 90 minutes. I'm talking very broadly here, where you can underperform for lots of your Arsenal career and get a new contract. Or be offered a new contract, or just go to the end of your contract if you feel like it, because, why the hell not? I'm very well paid. I can just sit here and see out my contract, and that's fine. And that kind of thing is really difficult for any manager, and I don't just mean Mikel Arteta. If somebody else came in and tried to do the same thing tomorrow, I am quite sure that there would be a measure of pushback from some of the people who quite enjoy things the way they are.
Absolutely. I think when Arteta came in, he started talking about his non-negotiables, which is the set of behaviours that we just spoke to, whichever they are to them. He didn't go into detail, that's personal to the dressing room, but he did talk about his football blueprint. He did speak about how he wanted to play, be a possession team, control the ball, attack as much as possible. I'm looking at the two things, I'm thinking, great, he's attacking the culture. Now he's talking about football that we all like, nice buzzwords.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is exactly what we need because of exactly what you alluded to there, Andrew. I was tired of seeing players come in, get well paid, and not have to produce. I was tired of seeing players hoodwink the fan base as they're coming towards the end of their contracts, then walk out for free. I was tired of seeing multiple mistakes on the football pitch by certain key players. We'll argue to the end of our days about players' talent and potential, and we'll agree and disagree. But I think there were some major moments in our recent history that need to be addressed to show that within this culture, that's not okay. But they're still here.
Yeah.
And they're still here making the same mistakes. So what does that tell you about our culture, how our standards have fallen over the last few years? You can do these things and you're still here. You can make huge mistakes which cost this club European representation at the top table and you're still here. You can disappear in certain games and you're still here. You can give penalties away and you're still here. You can throw your shirt down and tell the fans to do one and you're still here.
Yeah.
This all says it's okay. It's okay. You can come to Arsenal. You can enjoy yourself in the centre of London, go see a few museums, play in a beautiful stadium, a beautiful training ground, and it's okay to do that and you will still be here. It's okay to pop off to Dubai and come back and you'll play the next game. And this is the stuff we have to decide. Are we prepared to back someone who's going to challenge this in a consistent way, we hope, or are we just going to let this continue? And then it comes back to the question of who do we trust to apply the standards and the culture that this club, in my opinion, so dearly needs before it even talks about producing good football.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's, we have to talk about that phrase, I think, non-negotiables. It's a really good one. And I like it when a manager is up front. But I think we also have to recognize that within football, it is a complicated industry in that you're dealing with millionaires who are temperamental, egotistical, are told from minute one to minute the end of the day that they're great and everything about them is great. And I'm not saying all footballers are like that. Some of them are decent and humble people and but there are enough of those kind of characters to make it challenging for a manager, any manager. Yep. If Arsene Wenger had his challenges with certain players down the years, which he did, and he was a vastly experienced man who had, a lot of dealings with a lot of players and a lot of different incidents, etc., etc. If he had his incidents with players, a new manager is definitely going to have incidents with players and find things a little bit difficult. So the non-negotiables thing, great. But then you realize that actually it's kind of negotiable because of expediency, because of the team you want to select at the weekend, because you think, oh shit, this guy who's been a dickhead, I actually think I need him. Now, maybe that speaks a lot to the makeup of the squad that you have, but you immediately find yourself having to, at least in the eyes of fans, I think we should also recognize that we do not know everything. We have our view from the outside, and on the inside, things can be a lot less clear-cut than we think, or a lot more complicated than they appear to be. So, all of these things feed into the decisions, which isn't to defend them, but just to try and understand them. That you set it out in black and white. This is what it is. This is non-negotiable. And all of a sudden, people are saying, well, that looks pretty fucking negotiable to me. It's a difficult thing to keep on top of, particularly when, like I said at the start, I think people bought into that in a really positive way because it's what a lot of us wanted to see.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to see it. And I think the challenge is, you're absolutely right, we don't know everything. So we don't know what these non-negotiables are, but we can probably guess they're a set of good behaviours, right, and bad behaviours. So,
do you think it's more? Sorry to cut across. I mean, it strikes me, that it's probably more to do with how you behave at London Colney than what you do in your free time, per se.
I would definitely agree that within the team environment, within that culture, it's how you behave. And so when I read a couple of things today about lateness and punctuality, that is a worry, mate. That's a worry, because that's a basic. Right, that is a basic. The Willian thing, you know what? It didn't smell right, did it? Before that, that game, and then we sort of, I tried to brush it aside. Saying there must have been a good reason, but there obviously wasn't. That doesn't feel right, right? So, and then people once you show that little chink in your armour, then it's like, okay, what's the non-negotiable then? Do you see what I mean? And you leave yourself open to critique. You leave yourself open to critique from outside the club, even though we don't know everything. And it sounds like you leave yourself open to critique with inside the club, who do know what the rules of the road are. And those rules of the road have to be applied in a consistent manner for the people that know what those rules are and live by them every single day. Yeah. Remember, it's a situation. This is how we're going to not be. This is how we're going to live. That is exactly what we're talking about here. These are behavioural type rules of the road. And again, if you're going to do it, you have to live it. If you're going to apply it, you have to apply it to everybody in a consistent manner. Now, the frayed edges, for me, they started to show at Leeds, funny enough. Post-game interview about Pepe, that was the first time I thought, this doesn't feel very good. This feels like the pressure's starting to ramp up a little bit. And maybe there was issues before the game, which we maybe now are more aware of. So that, to me, was the moment when I think there were some questions being asked, maybe going the other way from the players to the management. And I think that's a moment in time that we may look back on and say, it started to go wrong there, or was that the start of a new turn where we actually come out of it? Although I'm sitting there feeling very doubtful about that today, but I'm hoping that we can turn out of this hole that we're in, and maybe that period we're just going through right now between Leeds and now is the period that he needs to come through, the club needs to come through to pivot for a new direction.
Yeah, well, look, I hope so. Because I think part of the culture that exists at Arsenal, the one that we don't like, the one that we want to get rid of, is in no small part because of a lack of leadership. Seems like the wrong word, but something akin to that, in the sense that when Arsene Wenger was there, like, he did things his own way, and he let some players away with more things than other players, and all of that. We know that, but there was a leader. There was somebody at the club who you could look to and say he is the figurehead. And then we went through this period where I think the ownership, because they trusted Ivan Gazidis, they put their eggs in his basket to assemble the new structure post Wenger, and then he left, and then Mislintat left, and then Raul had all the power, and then I don't think Raul's tenure as director of football is going to go down in Arsenal history in a way that we'll see him get a statue, shall I put it like that?
Well, you won't be building it, I know that for
no,
sure.
I fucking won't. Or I'll be building it out of, anyway, never mind. But you know what I mean? So we've got to a point where the last 24 months or so, we've lost that leadership, and there hasn't been anybody in charge, if you like, or the people who have been in charge have not been doing the right kind of job. They've been doing things which are perhaps at odds with the kind of culture that you want to create. And the people who are there and the players who are there have seen this and watched it, and they go through the motions and everything else, and they don't have accountability. This is a word that, I think we've used on the podcast, and I'm sure you guys have over at the Arsenal Vision podcast. Accountability, that when you behave in a certain way, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch, there are consequences, or there at least appear to be consequences, so trying to implement or trying to put in place a new culture whereby it won't be tolerated if you do this, or if you behave in a certain way, you're going to meet a lot of resistance. You're going to meet a lot of resistance, and it's going to cause conflicts. I think it is going to, and we've seen, it's amazing when you lay it out, some of the issues that we have had under Mikel Arteta. And in some ways, it's easy to look at those and think, well, this is an inexperienced manager. Maybe somebody who is, in time could turn out to be a better coach than a manager, because the man management side of things is a difficult part of it. And you think, well, maybe he's not good at that. Maybe he's not good at this side of the job. But maybe part of it is because when you try to change the way your team and your players behave, or what you expect from them, and they kick back, you don't really have any choice but to kind of be hard.
Yeah, I think it's just, let me take it back a little way. So with Wenger, when he was there, I was very much against him being all powering, particularly towards the end, because I felt we were too much in bed with him. The club was being run by his image. I do feel that he definitely built the club in a way that suited him and empowered his strengths. And that's his prerogative as the leader of our club. But everything about Arsenal was Arsene. And I didn't like that. I wanted it to be more federated. So when we started to pull out our org charts, Andrew, remember those? Right? When we started to pull out our org charts, my initial feeling was, yep, this is good. We've got layers in the club now. This is good. We haven't got a single point of failure. Great. And then we put Emery in charge. And Emery did okay for a short period of time, and then it fell apart in Baku, right? So, and then all of a sudden, the behaviours that he put in place, people didn't like it, didn't like how he communicated, leaks coming out of the dressing room, ex-players talk about the players, don't know what he's talking about. You're done. You're gone. Yeah. See you, mate. Then Arteta comes in after Freddie's little period, and he comes in with Arsenal values. Great. Somebody we know. We know him. He's played for us. Great. He's talking all the right things, but he's now laying down a set of rules to his players. They're thinking, well, yeah, that's good, but I'm sorry, you're not Arsene Wenger. You might want to be the single point of failure, whether the club needs to do that or not, and that's a debate. It's a strong debate. One I didn't really think much about when initially did it, but now looking back, I'm thinking, did you need to do that? Did you need to empower him so much? Because now you're laying him up against somebody who's the greatest manager in our history. You're now saying we're going back to that model, and by design, you literally end up comparing the two. And it's impossible to compare the two. One's in his first job and one has had a lifetime of management. And so you immediately create a tug of war, a duality between the old world and the new world. And there are still Arsene Wenger players here. There are still players that have been signed by Emery, and some of them are not playing, not even at the club anymore. And suddenly we got a situation where Arteta's coming, he wants to implant his own culture on. But he can't really buy that many players in the COVID market because we can't sell anybody. So he's coming hard, maybe expecting to make changes on the playing staff, but he actually can't. No one wants to buy him. We can't sell. We haven't got masses of money, so a couple of free transfers come in by our friendly agents, shall we say. And that they haven't helped the culture, in my opinion. They haven't helped us progress going forward. And so in a situation where he's talking strong, but you can't back it with action. So if you're going to talk strong to people, they're thinking, well, I'm on the way out here. My livelihood's under threat. I'm starting to internalise. There are a number of players in our club, in our dressing room, that will have a year to go in the summer or will be out of contract in the summer. We could easily see 10 to 12 players leave this club. Those 10 to 12 players right now, they know who they are. They know it's them. Do you think they're going to be running themselves into the ground? Do you think they're going to be talking about accepting these non-negotiables, or they'll be talking to our agents and internalised and looking for their next move? It's an incredible hodgepodge of a situation that he has to manage. And some of that he's done himself. Some of that he's not been advised well by the club. Particularly, I asked myself a question, I said the other day in the podcast, if we're offering Willian to this manager, we have to ask ourselves why we're doing that. If we're offering Cedric to him, why are we doing that? Why is this club doing that to him? Why do we think we need to do that? I don't think we should be. Again, it comes back to our identity. We should be thinking about our playing identity going forward. Don't worry about, why are we buying these experienced players? Like Andrew, why are we buying Lichtstein and Socrates? Are we that bereft of leadership that we feel we have to go to these older guys to bring them into the club? David Luiz? Is that our perception on the street, that we've got no leaders in the club, so we better get them in the dressing room? That sort of stuff really concerns me, and he has to manage this. And I'm afraid at the moment he's failing. Yeah, because we're sitting there in 15th, mate.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you can't back the results in any way. But I do think where we are, what we've got, what we're dealing with, what he is trying to deal with, is a consequence of not just the decisions that he has made since he took over, almost a year ago. I think what he is, and what any manager would have to deal with, are the guys, like you say, who've been part of the Wenger era, who've been part of the Emery era, part of the Sanyehi era, all these eras, all these things working together, people doing things their own way without any kind of defined strategy. And that's, that's a big issue for me is strategy. I just want to ask you who you think should set the culture and the identity at a football club, because at the moment we're looking at Mikel Arteta, and if it doesn't work for him, or if it doesn't work out for him, or if results keep going badly and the inevitable happens, we go back to the drawing board and we bring in somebody, I don't know who, but somebody who's going to come in and have some ideas, and who's going to want some players and specific kinds of players, and want to play a specific kind of football. And then he realizes that, he can't, because he's got a squad that's bloated and kind of crap, and he doesn't have the resources to do it. So he ends up doing the same thing that the other guys have done, and he tries to fudge it around and make the best of what he's got, but we lose whatever culture Arteta has tried to implement, or whatever change he's tried to implement. So you go back to square one. And this is why I think there was, I don't know if you saw this, the fans forum meeting during the week, where Vinay and Edu were talking, and they were saying that they're going to bring somebody in to to replace Husfami, who did the contracts. 2 weeks to the transfer window opens, and there's some contractual issues pressing anyway, guys. You might want to get that guy in. Yeah. No rush here, guys. Don't worry about it. But they're not going to get somebody to replace Raul Sanllehi because the power that Sanllehi had was divested into Arteta and Edu. You know, is there not a need for that to be set from higher up? Okay, this is how we're going to play.
Yeah.
These are the players that we feel as a club we need to help us play that way. Not the player that the agent mates brought in, not those guys, the easy signings to make, the deals which benefit the player and the agents and maybe other people far more than they benefit the football club and the team. That's not what we do. This is how we're going to play. These are the players that we're going to play it with. And you're going to pick the team, you're going to manage the team, and when results are good, we're going to love you. And when results are bad, we're going to get somebody else in. And they're going to use these players, but we know the players that we have. And whoever's coming in knows the players that we have and knows what's expected from them. And this is where I worry a lot about how many eggs we've put in the Arteta-Edu basket. You know, I know they've barely had a window. They had the end of the last window after Sanllehi left, and it was a crazy market because of COVID and everything else. And logic would tell you maybe, you know, you need more than one window to put things right and to bring in the kind of players that you want. But, you know, deals like Partey and Gabriel are promising, and they make you think, okay. And then deals like Willian make you wonder, it's just going to be kind of more of the same. So, you know, is there not a danger of putting too many eggs in the Arteta basket? So when inevitably at some point he has to go, I'm not saying it should be next week, you know, it could be a while from now. I'd like to see us win games again and turn things around. But when that happens, you don't have that being set from on high, unless that's Edu's role, do you think?
Well, yeah, I'm sure if the club are listening to this, and they could well be, they'll be thinking, well, we've got Edu to do that role. We've got Edu to do that role. But you know what? The fact you're asking me that question means you're not convinced. And how can we be convinced? Somebody that's quite young and experienced, and I'm not against youth, by the way. I think it's good that we've got fresh youth in the club. The club has been aged historically, and I wasn't a fan of that. So I'm really glad that we're freshening things up. But it's freshening things up and it's overexposing people. Right, so we're overexposed to Arteta because we put too many eggs in that basket, and Edu's got, you know, a young exec, lots of good track record in South America, not much track record in Europe. Well, last time I looked, we played in Europe. You know, we're trying to sort that one out. We played in Europe, so I'm thinking, well, actually, we lost Raul, and maybe that's the more important role to fill than the head of contracts guy. The head of contracts guy could be, you know, I don't care what his name is, right? As long as you do that job. But I do think we need a more visible leg to this chair. That third leg needs to be somebody of stature, because it creates a protected state for your club. It creates some sustainability. So there I was a few months ago watching us jump around Wembley, enjoying ourselves. At no point in that moment did I think we'd be here now. No point.
No,
and it's obvious that the club felt the same. Right, so, and everything was rosy, and so we've overinvested. This is just classic. You've got to mitigate that risk. If something was to go wrong, then what? You know, and we haven't done that. We haven't acted like a proper organisation. And now finally wanted to trim the club down, finally wanted to get some people out. We weren't against any of that. But think about how you're going to go forward. If we lose 5 home games on the trot, which we nearly just did, and the fans are in uproar, then what? You know, that's how you run your sports organisation. You can't have, when players and agents see this, by the way, if they look around and see a shambles going on, they're gonna take the mickey. They're gonna be. You heard me say about opportunities before. We've been riddled with opportunities over the last few years.
Yeah,
just absolutely riddled with it. And we've just allowed them to walk into our club, knock down the front door, and take our money out. Just literally take our money out laughing. Sell us a little dream. It's like they're walking in selling us double glazing. Get out. I don't want it. I don't want it. I want to do my own way. We're sitting around taking Chelsea's ex-players. This is not the culture and the identity of an elite football club. It needs to change, and some of that is football decisions, and some of that is the identity and the culture by which we're viewed and perceived. And when you start to stack it up and read it, and read the changes, and read the things that we've done wrong, read the things that haven't worked out for us, it's a long list, mate, and it's pretty damning.
I think this is a really interesting aspect of it because, I think we still, and maybe people at the club still think of us as a Champions League club, but we haven't been a Champions League club for, 4 years now?
Yeah.
We make decisions like we still think we're a Champions League club. We make decisions which are, in isolation, I think, justifiable. But as part of a wider strategy, if you can call it a strategy, because I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of kind of making shit up on the spot when it comes to our recruitment and things like that. They just don't stack up. And they don't produce what you need them to produce. So is it kind of... Is the way forward tied in with the need to step back and think about and accept what we actually are now and put in place a plan, a strategy for what we want to be again? Because if we keep behaving like a Champions League club, even though we're not, we're never going to get back to, if that's the promised land or whatever it is, we are never going to get back there. Yeah. You can't make any kind of progress without at least acknowledging that things are not what they used to be, that we are not the football club that we were told we would be. How many times? We could do things that excite you. We're going to compete with the likes of Bayern Munich, etc., etc. We are so far removed from that now that there's almost, I know to use your phrase, blow it up, but there's a need to kind of press the reset button. And even in our heads as fans, and it's a difficult one to accept. It is a difficult one to accept when you spend so long in those upper echelons, when it's now gone so far down the road that you kind of need to turn back and just kind of retrace your steps and think, well, how the fuck did I get here? How do I get to where I want to go? We have to think about what we want to be, not what we used to be.
I absolutely agree. I think what we need to do is get used to this word called acceptance. Right? We have to accept who we are and where we are right now, not who we used to be, not who we've been historically. Acceptance. So it's much like anybody who's facing any problems in life. You have to accept you have a problem, right? And sometimes, when people are struggling with alcohol, or struggling with things, addictions or things like that, it's a real struggle. It's a real struggle, and so it's almost like every now and again we pop down the off license and go and do something that we used to do, with a deal or a contract that's not really what we should be doing. Based on where we are, based on where the club is strategically, based on our dressing room, based on our contract situation, we really are struggling with our own selves at the moment. And it's hard. It's really hard, Andrew. We've been around we've done a few laps between us, right? We've been around. Yeah. We've seen some good and bad times, right? No drama. I've seen some really good times. And I've seen this for a little while now. I've just been a bit concerned about some of the things I understand, like the football side of things, the choices of players, when you choose certain players and you choose another one that's very similar and then another one that's even more similar. Hold on a minute here, the game's moving on. I can challenge that because I can see that on the football pitch. That's just, and I will do that forever, right? But it's like, I just feel, okay, we're here. We have to accept we're here. And to be fair to Arteta, he has, a lot of his noises have been, we've got a long way to go. We are not where we need to be. Even we're winning, he was saying now. I'm thinking, no, mate, I'm ready for Champions League. Be quiet. Do you know what I mean? So I struggle with acceptance too, And he gets saying, we've got a long way to go. But then you turn around and you look inside and you've got to ask yourself, okay, we are here and we've been here. This is a 5-year issue minimum. That's why we're here. We have to pivot. We have to change. The next job, Andrew, I mentioned blow it up about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The next job is a blow it up job. There's nothing else to do, right? The next person that comes in, if Arteta doesn't survive, the job is clear. What's he going to do? Is he going to mollycoddle this lot and give them new contracts? No chance. They're gone, aren't they? The next job is absolutely clear. It's clear, much clearer than when Emery had it, when we half and halved and weren't sure if he's going to be the right person or not until he wasn't. This job now, right from now to the summer, is clear as you could ever imagine a job to be. There is only one thing to do: change the playing squad. And then from therein, you can create a culture based on the people that you've hired.
Yeah.
Not the people someone else has hired, which is really challenging.
Yeah, I was listening to you guys talk about Monchi and what he did at Sevilla, and the idea that, it takes a long time to rebuild a squad makes a lot of sense, but you can also do it quite quickly if you're smart and if you've got the right people in place. Absolutely. And you look at what's coming up next summer, right? And you look at who potentially is going to go. Like, we assume Mesut Ozil is going to go. We assume that Mustafi will go. Socrates will go. David Luiz will go. There's £750,000 per week off your wage bill. Then you look at players like Kolasinac, like Xhaka, who should go. If he stays beyond next summer, then we are not learning the lessons that we need to learn. Someone like Dani Ceballos, unless he pulls it out of the bag between now and next June, he should go and back to Real Madrid. There's going to be a lot of churn naturally. I think we may have to push the boat out a little bit to sell Xhaka or Kolasinac, because they may not get the kind of offers which are commensurate with the wages that they're on at Arsenal. Certainly that's one of the reasons why it was difficult to move Kolasinac last summer or in the last transfer window. But you're looking at then having to either bring in or promote a lot of young players or a lot of new players, and this is where I think it's really important for Arsenal to have a genuine plan, a real, proper, dyed-in-the-wool, fucking nailed-on plan about how we are going to rebuild. Because we can't just get to next summer and go, oh, shit, all these guys, right, who are we going to bring in? But when it comes to recruitment, obviously the players you bring in from your academy are going to be young, but when it comes to recruitment, you can't keep doing the Luiz thing, the Willian thing, the Lichtsteiner thing, the Socrates thing, the Cedric thing. Yep. You just cannot do that if you want to be, if you actually genuinely are interested in rebuilding and improving. You have to target the market to bring in young talent. It doesn't have to be 18, doesn't have to be 19. You can look at players in their early 20s who've got plenty of experience, and that should be the focus of our recruitment, as far as I'm concerned. It's about whether or not the people who are in charge right now are still going to be in charge next summer. And if they're not, then who's putting in place their plan? This is what worries me about it going wrong. It's not so much that I'm like overly invested in Mikel Arteta. Like a lot of people, I feel warm towards him because of his time as a captain and because of winning the FA Cup and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what I want is my football club to be successful and my team to be successful. And, if there are casualties along the way at the playing staff or at managerial level, so be it. That's part and parcel. It's all in the game, But the worry that I have is if we've gone down the road with Edu and Arteta's plan and they get canned, or I don't know, who's making the decisions? Who's going to bring in the next guy? What's Josh Kroenke going to do? Josh Kroenke and Vinay, with all due respect, who's a business guy, where is the football brain if you like. And I know where it is at the moment. It's in Arteta, but it appears to be struggling a little bit right now, obviously.
It does. This is the very similar conversation I had last night after our podcast. I said it's not that I'm overly invested in Arteta, but I don't trust anybody else. I don't know anybody else. So you're really in a situation where I'm in a situation of who do I trust to make the next steps? Right? There's nobody left. We've been cleaned out. There's nobody left. Who do I trust? The ownership has been absent. Who do I trust to take some of the biggest decisions in our recent history? Because that's where we are. You mentioned about 8 players there. I can give you a few more. Lacazette in the last year of his contract.
Yeah, for sure.
El Neni in the last year of his contract. I think Eddie's in the last year of his contract.
Is.
Balogun's not even, he's well in the last year of his contract. So it's at all levels within the club. We got some major decisions to take. So it's not about who's doing a good job and who's not doing a good job. I want my club to be much better than it is today, much like everybody does. So who's going to take us there? Because if we fire everybody, there's nobody left. But, if Arteta goes, well, you know what? Edu's part of that as well. So then he goes.
Yeah. Like I'm very strongly of the opinion that if Arteta gets the sack, Edu should also get the sack.
Absolutely. And Edu's giving Arteta a little bit of support in the press the other day. I'm thinking, mate, I hope you're not sitting too comfortable in your chair because I'm looking at you. Yeah. I'm looking at you. If anything, you're on a rockier ground than the manager is. If he gets 3 wins, he'll be fine. What about you? What are you doing? Your period's coming up in January and in the summer, and you better be tip-top because lots of people are looking at you very, very closely and will judge you in those periods. So I wouldn't be looking down from a high horse saying, I support this, I support that. You've got a big job to do. As far as I'm concerned, they're a partnership. So if one doesn't make it, they both don't make it. Then, Andrew, who's going to be looking after the team? Is going to be the chef? Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure who else is there at the moment
we had this question.
Take up the reins.
We had this question for the Arsecast extra the other day, and I meant to ask it of James. I apologise. I think it was on our Discord, but somebody saying, like, if Arteta gets the sack, like, who takes temporary charge of the team? Like, is it Steve Bold? I mean, that's all that's there.
Steve Bold and Per.
And Per Mertesacker, but Per doesn't want to be that guy. He doesn't. No. You could see how uncomfortable he was in the period where he was trying to give some support to Freddie. And even then, when Freddie was the interim manager, all we had was Per, the goalkeeping coach, and fucking Doris, the tea lady, on the bench beside him. So and again, look, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that if there's a big decision to be made, it shouldn't be made just because there isn't anyone there. But the fact that there isn't anyone there should be a significant worry. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's something called Lean Six Sigma, where you have lean organisations where we get less people to do more things. But we've really nailed that one. we've nailed that one, and now we're in a situation where it feels like there's 2 people left in the club. Yeah, and that's what it feels like from here. I'm sure obviously it's not the case, but that's how it feels, and that is not healthy for any organisation to have that lack of depth and too much of a single point of failure. It's not healthy. We've done it for years. We've gone back to it because we felt comfortable with it. But how can you be comfortable if I don't think Arsenal have quite managed the fact that we've grown up as a club. So we've grown into this organisation. I think we became too bloated. But now we haven't quite managed the size of the club we actually are. We haven't quite known how to act. We've been caught between 2 stools, between trying to be a little bit cute sometimes in the transfer market where we don't have to be. We can just be who we are. Don't be cute. Just buy Kante. Don't buy Xhaka. Just buy Kante. Pay his brother a couple of million quid. Just buy him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because that'll benefit the club. You know what I mean? That'll benefit the club. Don't be swallowed up by your morals. Just do the right thing for the club. And it's those type of things. And sometimes when I see those things in the press, I think, you know what? I'm one of the reasons why I support Arsenal, because of our values, because of our morals. And I think, well, you know what? That's great. But every now and again, you've got to say, well, actually, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? How elite do you want to be? Because other people are just doing what's required to be better.
Other football clubs are absolute bastards.
Yeah.
They are bastards. at every fucking level. And
we're trapped in our Arsenal morals, mate. We're trapped in them.
Or we've just been bastards to ourselves, and made the wrong decisions along the way. And I'll tell you, one thing I think, not that it gives me great optimism, but I suspect over the last little while there has been some slight change at ownership level, and this isn't to back KSE or anything like it, but I think, for a long time they didn't have to worry. They didn't have to worry about anything, really. It got a bit tetchy at the odd AGM, and Stan would sit there and he wouldn't say anything, and Arsene would get up and he'd pick up the microphone and he'd captivate the room, make everything better, and whether people hated Wenger or whatever else, when he stood up there and he talked, he's a convincing talker, and he said the right things, and people, but we kind of, the consistency that we had as a football club meant they did not have to think. Yeah. They didn't have to make decisions, really. It's just like, well, we're top four the whole time. Champions League money is there. Here's some money for transfers. Go do it again. Oh, look, we've won the cup. That's nice. We've won a trophy. We're winning, blah, blah, blah. And now over the last 3 years, 4 years, the trajectory is obvious. Everyone can see it. I think they kind of thought they could just trust Ivan to put things in place, but in doing so, like you say, we left ourselves open to opportunists, and we've taken a big hit. At the end of the day, this is a big organization that they own, that they I don't think some of the stuff that's happened behind the scenes will have gone down well with a big American corporate organization. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
So it demands more from them now. It demands more, and I think we saw that with Tim Lewis being appointed to the board as a non-executive director, to provide some kind of oversight. So, perhaps there is something to be, I'm not sure if pleased about is the right thing, but some level of oversight that might push us can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, I'll see some of the actions since he's been on board have been quite decisive, right? And and I quite like them in isolation. I think it's the right thing. We've heard some of the chat in the background, and it's the right thing. But how we build from here on in is not, is up for debate. And did we need to overburden Arteta with that role? Because what it does now, it restricts our ability to manipulate the organisation appropriately. Because now you've said we're here. So if we bring someone in over the top to be like a head of football, what does that mean to two other people? Yeah. You kill their careers. So you haven't given yourself any wiggle room. You can't, how are you going to retitle the contracts guy? What's that? So you've really said, this is who, we're building the club's image in this guy, which is great. But if your centre-backs don't like him, or your centre midfielders don't like this guy, then what? Right? And that's potentially what's happening right now. Right? So, and that happens in a dressing room. A dressing room culture is something else, mate. You get eaten by it or not. And that dressing room ate Emery, ate him alive, just checked out on him right in front of us. He took his money and off he went. And, whether you liked him or not, whether he could communicate with us or not, whether we believed his story or not, he wasn't a bad guy in the end, and he's showing that right now in his next job, right now, right? So, but he couldn't work with the group that he had, and that happens sometimes. You go to a job, you go to a firm. I don't fit this firm. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me how I behave and how it doesn't allow me to thrive. So I need to be out of here. It doesn't work for me. And that happens in everyday life for everybody. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it happened to Emery, and the dressing room met him. Is dressing room going to eat Arteta now? I don't know. And then we have to decide, are we going to let that happen?
Yeah, well, that's it. Are you going to let the dressing room, it's one of those things that, if they eat Arteta, they'll eat the next guy. The
next guy will.
And they'll eat the next guy and the next guy. Is there not, again, maybe it's not right bringing it around to culture, but, and again, this really depends on results, how a manager is perceived and everything else. So we're not overlooking that. But do you need, maybe, in order to change things, in order to effect the kind of change that you want, you've got to show that if you're the old guy, the experienced guy, the guy in the dressing room who's had the track record of falling out with this manager and that manager and that manager, that like at this club, you're the one that's going to go. That footballers, they don't hold all the power or as much power as they like to think they do.
It's really important that I often hear me talk about, we need the serenity of results, because we really do need some results in the next 2-3 weeks. We really do, because this is getting serious. Every team seems better than us. I watched Fulham the other day and they look pretty good. Do you know what I mean? I watched them, honestly. I watched them. They look really good. I'm thinking, crikey, we killed Fulham on the first day of the season. And now I'm looking at them. They got shape. They look fast. They look athletic. I'm thinking, oh my God, we got to play Fulham. I'll be worried. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause that's where we are right now. That is where we are. We managed to, I was sort of relieved after the Southampton game, but should I be relieved with a home point against Southampton? Well, historically, no, it doesn't make sense. But where we are right now, I feel relief was an appropriate emotion last night, and so yeah, we're in a place, Andrew. We're in a place where we need some calm to allow us to accept who we are and deliver a plan to change this once and for all. And the only way we're going to get calm is by getting points. And as soon as we get some points, then we can breathe and go, okay, what are we going to do in January? What's the plan for the summer? We can get some movement. We're at the behest of transfer windows. So we have to do things in January. We have to accelerate things. We have to make, and this is where we need support for ownership. We may have to wear some contract costs. We have to wear some loyalty payments. Let's not be too proud now. We've got a club to maintain here.
Yeah.
Right? We've got a club to maintain, and people are used to our club being where it is. We are built in a certain way. We have infrastructure. We have everything in place to be this club. We need to start being it. And now if we're going to support this guy, we need to support him financially so he can make those decisions to remove those people out of the dressing room that are causing him trouble. And he needs to sharpen his game up. Right, simple as that.
Yeah,
and he needs. It's not all about the club. He's part of these decisions as well. So he needs to sharpen his game up. I'm sure he will with a few results. But if he doesn't get those results, mate, he will not be here. And that's it, because the club comes first. And if he's not able to turn the dressing room around to produce performances, to produce results, then I'm afraid he, like any other guy, he will pay the price.
It is mad. It's just mad. Like you, I did not expect to be here after what happened in the summer and winning the cup and everything else. But I guess going back to that word, acceptance, that you used, it could be applied across the board here, that the acceptance of what's happening in the very short term and the acceptance of what we need to do in the medium and long term are equally important. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Big game, of course, this weekend against Everton, away from home. Can he return to his former club and take a win? I hope so. As ever, Clive, great talking to you. If people don't listen to the Arsenal Vision podcast, they should. It's a great podcast, really interesting stuff after every game, so do check it out. Keep fingers crossed for the weekend, Clive, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, mate. Love to chat. Cheers.
Follow Clive on Twitter at ClivePAFC. That's at ClivePAFC. And he is part of the Arsenal Vision podcast crew, which you can find at arsenalvisionpodcast.com and, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. We do have a big game on Saturday evening. Of course, we travel to Goodison Park to take on Everton, who are playing better than us right now. But that, I think, is applicable to pretty much every other football team on the planet. I don't just mean in English football, I mean everywhere. The Milton Keynes under-8s, third reserves would probably be a challenge for us right now. So that's what we've got to contend with. Hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe, you never know. I'm talking myself into the idea that it might be okay. I'm not that convinced. I'm not that confident, but we will preview that game for Patreon members. Myself and Lewis Ambrose will do our usual Patreon preview pod. You can find it at patreon.com/Arseblog if you're a member. If you're not a member, you can sign up for just a $5 a month. You get instant access to all the content and all the other Patreon benefits. Don't forget to check out Arsebiz as well, arsebiz.arseblog.com. I know we're getting close to Christmas, so maybe it won't work for Christmas shopping, but if you are looking to do some shopping for anything at all, maybe you can help support a fellow Arsenal fan. We've got a list of hundreds of Arsenal fans who run their own businesses and services and everything else, and you can find them all at arsebiz.arseblog.com, all nicely filtered and categorized so you can find exactly what it is that you're looking for. Okay, we will leave it there. Thank you very much again for being here. Thanks for listening, for downloading, for all the comments and all the feedback. It's hugely appreciated by everybody here who works on the site. James and I will be here on Monday with an Arsecast Extra. Fingers crossed. Man, what we wouldn't give for a Goodly morning. So let's hope that somehow we can, do that crazy thing that we used to do and win a game of football in the Premier League. Let's see what happens. Enjoy your weekend. Talk to you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.
Not too worried about these corners. I mean, it might come back to bite me here, but I think Tottenham have got the dominancy in the air there, so I'm not sure anyone can get the head on the first ball for Liverpool, apart from that one.
Oh, Sim! It's Firmino in the 90th minute.
Wow, what a header. Not sure anyone can get the head on the first ball for Liverpool. What a header. I think Tottenham have got the dominancy in the air there, so dominancy in the air. What a header. It might come back to bite me here, bite me. What a header. Not too worried about these corners.
Firmino in the 90th minute.
What a header.